Order the City Council meeting for November 14th. The meeting time is 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Perkins.
Here.
Councilmember Rubio.
Here.
Councilmember Veros.
Here.
Vice Mayor Armstrong.
Here.
Mayor Hudson.
Here. Okay. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And what's our first item tonight?
Item 3, announcements. 3.1, changes and additions to the agenda. We have none this evening. Item 3.2, if you would like to speak under public comment or regarding an agenda item, please fill out a speaker card located in the back of the room and bring it forward to the city clerk.
Thank you. Okay, public comment is open. At this time, you are invited to address the city council on any item that is not on the agenda tonight, or if you wanted to discuss something on section 6 of tonight's agenda, that's special presentation, we invite you to do it now. Do we have any cards?
I do have one speaker card for this item, Sue Bach.
Sue?
Good evening, City Council and city staff. Climate change is the most pressing existential threat of our time. It's not just about the weather, it's about the quality of life we lead and the legacy we leave for future generations. In the past 5 years, we've witnessed the devastating impact of climate change through events like the fires in the San Francisco Bay Area and California. In September, we were reminded again of how important the air quality is to us. Rising healthcare concerns, from increased asthma rates to the spread of infectious diseases, underscore the urgency of the situation. Yet despite these challenges, the City Council of San Ramon has been slow to act. Over 2 years ago, the San Ramon Valley Climate Coalition was formed with a singular purpose: to implore the City Council to take decisive action on climate change. From advocating for the electrification of new home construction to reducing traffic congestion, our efforts have been to call for a climate emergency declaration and the establishment of a sustainability climate task force to align with California's greenhouse gas emission goals. We're still waiting for the ad hoc committee's progress forming a climate committee. Today, our collective voice has been amplified through the support of 252 signatures on our petition. This petition is not just a piece of paper, it is a testament to the unity and determination of our community. Each signature represents a commitment to a sustainable future, a future we all envision and strive to achieve. I also have in my hand a document aimed at assisting cities in navigating the complexities of the Infrastructure Act. And this was created by the Alliance for a Sustainable Future, which is a joint effort by the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions. This document is a comprehensive guide and crafted to empower urban planners and decision makers in implementing the act effectively. It's not just about signing petitions, it's about providing tangible solutions. As we raise our voices, let us not only call upon the San Ramon City Council but also extend our support to neighboring cities like Walnut Creek, Pleasanton, Dublin, Lafayette, Martinez, Hayward, and Fremont, and more, up to 56 other cities in this Bay Area that support climate change, have some sort of climate commission or department or sustainability director. Together, let's set an example of proactive climate action and dispel the notion that our efforts won't make a difference. In conclusion, by working together with a climate commission, we can guide, support the city staff, and encourage other commissions to actively participate in climate solutions while saving resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
That was the only speaker card I've received on this item.
Okay. And we have some written
We did not have written comment for this item, but we did have it later on.
This is for the consent calendar.
Okay. Consent calendar is next, and I believe.
Let's read this.
Okay.
Item 5, consent calendar.
Okay, let me just say, before a motion is made to approve the consent calendar, I would like to make a statement about consent calendar item number 5.7, in accordance with Government Code Section 54953C3. October 24, 2023, regular city council meeting, city council met in closed session to perform the annual evaluation of the city attorney. The city council voted unanimously to increase the incumbent base salary by 6%, which will add $16,200 in base salary to a new total salary of $286,200 effective September 25th, 2023. In addition, the city attorney will continue to receive management incentive pay consistent with all city department directors in the amount of $500 per month. Anybody wish?
I'll move the consent calendar. Whoop, I'm late.
They're quick. Do we have any cards?
Do not have any speaker cards for this item.
Okay, I'll second it.
Too late. You gotta vote for it.
Okay, looks like it's adopted to me. Is that 5-0?
Yep.
Thank you. Item 6, special presentation, 6.1, proclamation declaring 2023 as the San Ramon Chamber of Commerce 40th anniversary, presented to Heidi Keniston Lee, President and CEO, and Mino Sastry, Chamber Board Chair.
All right, I'll read the proclamation here. Is this on? Yeah, here we go. Okay, I have a proclamation of the City Council of the City of San Ramon congratulating the San Ramon Chamber of Commerce for 40 years of service. Whereas the San Ramon Chamber of Commerce started in 1983 with 24 charter members and the mission of enhancing the quality of life and economic vitality in the San Ramon Valley. And whereas for 40 years, the Chamber has facilitated countless successful business relationships, tremendous business growth, effective business education, and impactful business advocacy. And whereas the Chamber fosters an increased civic engagement with its local elected and city officials. And whereas the Chamber brings together community stakeholders and thought leaders to share important information and to provide access to decision makers through events such as the State of the City Address and the Tri-Valley Mayor Summit. And whereas through the years, the San Ramon Chamber has participated in numerous community events, promoting its members, creating community, and celebrating the spirit of San Ramon. Now therefore, be it resolved that the City of San Ramon recognizes the San Ramon Chamber's 40 years of service to the business and nonprofit communities, but also the community at large to support local businesses within our great community. Signed, Mayor David E. Hudson, November 14th, 2023. All right, and I'll present this to Heidi. And Mino, congratulations. We can get a picture here real quick, and then all right. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you.
Into the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor Hudson, Vice Mayor Armstrong, and City Council members. Very much appreciated. The San Ramon Chamber of Commerce is thrilled to be celebrating 40 years of helping businesses and community organizations grow and succeed. With a whopping 4 months of experience at the Chamber under my belt, it has become clear to me that the value of the Chamber lies in building meaningful and impactful relationships and connections, whether connecting businesses and community organizations with networking opportunities, visibility, customers, resources, education, community investment opportunities, policy information, or decision makers. we are truly connecting them for success. We truly value that we have a positive and productive relationship with the City of San Ramon, one that fosters proactive collaboration and positions the Chamber as a strong stakeholder in the community from whom you seek input and perspective. To that end, there are some core topics of interest that the Chamber will be following that fall within your purview. And I will just reference general topics that are of interest to us. Certainly business climate, quality of life in San Ramon, retail preservation, housing, safety, economic and workforce development. The Chamber is here to work with you to make San Ramon a great place to live, play, work, and do business. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our chairman of our board of directors, Mino Sastry.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you to the city for this great proclamation. I just wanted to take a moment to make two comments. One, I wanted to acknowledge the great work of our board of directors leadership, as well as our ambassadors, some who are in the audience today. I wanted to acknowledge the great work this past calendar year. We put together a nice strategic plan to serve our business community and our membership. We are proud to share that not only have we executed on a number of those initiatives, we've also exceeded a lot of our expectations. And it's the great active work of our ambassadors and our board of directors. We've added a few more people, hopefully, to our board of directors with different perspectives to continue to add to this wonderful city of San Ramon and the vision that we're trying to build. Lastly, I would like to say not only will we work with you, we would like to serve you, this city, and in access to our business constituents, providing data and information that's going to help you in all the informed critical decisions you need to make to better positively impact our business community. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Speeches are so short, we're going to be out of here quick tonight.
Any comments?
Any comments from the council?
Questions?
No, I just want to thank the chamber for what they do and looking forward to your WOW banquet.
Yeah. Likewise, I see Heidi and Mino, it seems like everywhere, whether it's city-sponsored events or chamber-sponsored events, different cultural events, and you know, things like the business roundtable. So you guys are all over the place, engaging with the city, and you do so many great things for our business community and to support our city. So thank you very much. Well deserved, and happy birthday.
Have you been on the ice rink yet?
Even on the ice rink yet?
She's been there.
No, that would be a dangerous proposition.
We don't carry insurance for that, do we?
So
So I would like to,
go ahead, Sridhar.
congratulations to San Ramon Chamber of Commerce. You play a very important role in our city, especially how we are serving our community around the businesses, like small businesses as well as large businesses. Now, I already see that there is new energy added to city from the city perspective from on the chamber side. So thanks to your leadership and all your great work in looking forward to see you bringing more economic development within our city. Thank you. Once again, congratulations on 40 years.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. Great job. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to echo similar comments. Thank you both and your entire chamber for the work that you've been doing in helping us to really build out San Ramon in a very strategic manner. You know, this is a very critical time to make sure to think about how we build out our, build economic strength and development locally here in San Ramon. And you're an important role in that. And so thank you for all that you do.
All that you did before you're doing chamber. Okay, next item, please.
Item 7, deferred consent items, we have none. Item 8, unfinished business, there is none this evening. Item 9, new business. 9.1, resolution number 2023-121, accepting the report by Baypack Consult, Inc. regarding the bridge type of the Crow Canyon Road Iron Horse Trail bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing, providing direction to staff with regard to the preferred type, and appropriating $259,121 from the general fund to CIP 905531 for a total project budget of $2,534,471. And a staff presentation by Robin Bartlett, Public Works Division Manager.
Thank you.
Rob?
And Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So the item before us this evening is really the next step in the process of constructing a pedestrian and bicycle overcrossing for the Iron Horse Trail over Crow Canyon Road. This is essentially similar to where we were a few years ago with the Bollinger Canyon overcrossing, where the city had done some preliminary analysis, and we went to the city council to refine the bridge selection from what had already been determined in the environmental documents and based on public input about what kind of bridge would be located in what place. Before, it was the cable stay bridge you now see over Bollinger Canyon Road. And in this case, we had public input regarding a arch bridge over Crow Canyon Road, and now we're looking at some refinements. I don't know what just happened to our system here.
It's close.
What's wrong with that one?
It's a rustic design.
Yeah.
Brooklyn.
The Romans liked arches.
Third time's a charm.
All right, thank you.
Sorry.
So here we are. So this is what we'll go over this evening. First, just give you a brief background and talk about the location and site constraints. And then we'll look at these bridge structure options, all arches, truss, butterfly, tied arch, some of the key considerations and our probable project costs. And then if you have any questions, we can certainly address those. So briefly touching on the background of this project, this really started around 2009 with an initial study that looked at overcrossings of the Iron Horse Trail over arterials in the corridor. That included Bollinger Canyon Road and Crow Canyon Road, both covered in the same study. That progressed through 2012 and 2014. There was additional studies and analysis done that included these design charrettes where the public was asked to give input on the type of bridge that they were looking for. That resulted in the cable stay selection, as I mentioned, for Bollinger Canyon Road and a arch bridge at, or I say cable stay at Bollinger Canyon Road and the arch at Crow Canyon Road. So the process has progressed. 2017, we completed the environmental documents for the project. And last year, we received a federal earmark in the amount of $2 million to proceed with the design of the structure. So that basically brings us to today. In order to move forward with that design, we want to go back and look at those bridge types and refine it as we did in the past. And to help us in that effort, we have asked for the assistance of Francis Lowe and BayPAC. Francis is very knowledgeable on bridges and has consulted with CCTA and provided input for our Bollinger Canyon overcrossing. So he and his team have done some research and analysis with regard to our options here, and he will go into those details for you.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council members. Francis Lowe here. So first off, we want to just talk a little bit about the site location. I'm sure you guys know that a lot better than I do, but a common point of reference that as we were working on the project that we like to use is what we call the dome at the PG&E Technical Center. And what you can see on the screen right now, there is an kind of aerial view right from the top. The trail basically, or the bridge is probably going to be on the west side. of the trail itself. And there is also a kind of a bird's eye simulation looking towards the west. So you could kind of see the general perspective of the bridge structure. And as Robin mentioned, one of the things that we always want to do is take a look at the site and identify some of the key constraints. And sometimes it could be opportunities. And obviously we have the bridge has to cross a pretty wide roadway with a median. So that's really dictates the length of the main crossing. At the same time, we are constrained to place the bridge within the existing right-of-way. And as we all know, there is also a fairly significant number of underground and above-ground utilities, not the least of which is the PG&E transmission line. And we generally look at the topography, which by itself doesn't really present any issue. In fact, it's almost ideal, it's pretty flat and not much of any problem there. One other item that we also want to bring everyone's attention is that we know that we are very focused on good aesthetics. And sometimes we like to do things to embellish things and make it look prettier. But when you look at the site, looking towards the east and the west, you actually see different things, right? Looking towards the east, coming off the freeway, there are a lot of trees on both sides. So you really only see the portion of the bridge over the roadway. You don't see much beyond that. But if you are heading west, coming from the hills down towards the freeway, then you actually see a lot more of what's going on behind the curb, behind the sidewalk. So that's one thing that we want to consider as we look at the aesthetics of the structure. So we actually, in the 2015 report that was completed, the proposal was a tie arch, which we are going to show a little later on. And what we also want to look at are a couple different alternatives that also provide the look of an arch, but they all have their pros and cons in different ways. So I'm going to go through them here in 3 separate slides. So this is what we call a truss arch. Really is what we call a truss bridge, basically a steel bridge that looks like that. And a really good example of a truss arch is the one that the City of Dublin recently put up over Dublin Boulevard. So there's a really good example of what it looks like. Ours is a little smaller because we don't have the same span. The bridge isn't as long. And so ours is a little shorter. We are looking at a span of about 142 feet. We don't want to place the column immediately next to the back of the sidewalk. We want it to be placed a little further out, so it's looks a little more spacious and stuff. It's basically all steel construction, except that the deck will be concrete. And what we are looking at is most likely they will be prefabricated offsite and just be placed on the truss once the truss has been placed on the columns. And we don't expect there to be any significant amount of force work over the roadway. So a little different from what you're looking at right outside the chamber. We would not be shutting down travel lanes. Now, we likely will, for a short amount of time, we are probably looking at a couple months, where we would put what we call a force work tower, basically a temporary support right in the middle to assist with the fabrication of the connection of the truss member. So, but it will be a short period of time, and we are looking at possibly just shutting down the turn pocket going into the PG&E facility. But for the roadway itself, we don't really anticipate much of any significant change, except during the erection of the main bridge. Then maybe over the weekend there will be roadway closure over the weekend.
On this particular design, I assume it's possible with a truss. You can make it look very similar to what what railroad bridges often look like, with a more angular and then a flat top. So if you wanted to carry the railroad theme of the Iron Horse Trail, you could do. It would be not unlike this, but it would have instead of an arch, it would be up the sides and across the top.
That is definitely possible. What we have been trying to do was to follow the public input process that ended from the previous study, where the folks, where, we really like to have an arch-looking bridge. So we are trying to follow that cue and that line of thinking. So the next one is what we call a butterfly arch. This is a fairly classic arch, actually. So you can see that it's a much lighter structure. It looks a lot more slender compared to the truss. The span is about 140 feet. It's not a very classic arch bridge in the sense that we actually transfer some of the loading a little differently from a more classic arch to save money, because this way we can actually reduce some of the seismic loading and also the forces within the arch itself. Again, we would expect the main steel members, which are you can see it here, is the two brown steel pipes essentially. They would be placed on site again with a force work tower, so that they can be assembled. And once it's assembled, we expect the bridge deck to be again precast and just placed, and they would be supported by hangers coming down from those arch pipe members. And the main span is going to be about 190 feet. The staging is a little more complicated because of how you load up the structure. And then there is also the option of actually doing the deck, instead of precasting, you can actually pour that on site. But then that would require force work, but that's just an option that would be available. And if it's decided that this is the design to move forward with, then during final design, the designers can actually make a better determination of what worked best, and considering all the costs and other considerations.
What is false work again?
False work is, so when you place concrete, you need to create some forms, right? Steel forms. But since it's up in the air, so you actually need to have some temporary supports to prop them up to support it. So that whole system is called force work.
Got it.
Yeah. So this is the tie arch that was proposed as part of the original 2015 report. Here you can actually see the whole arch, and the difference is the arch actually sits on top of the column, whereas actually, if maybe I can just go back to one slide. Oops. So in this case, you can actually see that the bottom of the arch actually sits on the ground, whereas the other one sits on top of the column. So under this design that was developed back in 2015, I think the main span is about 240 feet. And then, and generally tie arch actually is a little taller. And some good examples of what a tie arch looks like. If you go onto Highway 80 at University, and I think Gilman, there are actually two tie arches in that area. And generally, they look a little more masculine, bulkier, and compared to the butterfly arch, which tend to be a little more, look quite a bit more slender.
I'm a little surprised at the distance on the span, because it looks like the columns that are supporting the ends of the span are quite a ways back from the road.
Yeah.
Do they need to be that far back, or?
That was the design that was developed back in 2015. We haven't tried to modify that at this point.
Okay.
But
was the cost estimate based upon the 240-foot span?
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's possible that it would be.
It could be reduced somewhat
if it went down to 200 or the 190 that was in the previous one.
Right.
Okay.
That's a possibility. So under the steel arch, the tie arch, the more classic construction is a pour in place concrete deck. So that would actually require force work over the roadway, probably about a year or so. There's one distinction between tie arch and the other two options, whereas the other two options, you could mostly do that precast without having to pour concrete and having false work over the roadway.
Does the false work close? I mean, I know while you're probably installing the false work, it may close it, but after it's installed, does that reduce the lanes or the throughput underneath?
It depends on how it's designed. Yeah, I think we can probably specify that so it doesn't significantly decrease the width. But obviously, the more you ask in terms of clearances and stuff like that, the higher the cost, right? So there's a.
There used to be a lot of traffic on Crow Canyon Road.
Yeah.
We won't go into that.
Yeah.
We're hoping that this time next year that there'll be plenty of traffic on Crow Canyon, and it would be a real problem if we had to reduce the number of lanes. There's 4 lanes under there now, going each direction. So we wouldn't want to. We want to minimize the traffic impact.
That's right.
I recognize over a weekend or over a short duration, you might have to close it down, like when you're pouring. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then generally, I think if there is an attractive option where you do not have to place false work, that's generally what we would prefer. Get everything out of the roadway.
So these false work you're going to place in a phase-wise, like one, then it is done in one area, then you move the false work, or is it going to be multiple?
Yeah, more than likely, we'd be closing down the roadway over a weekend and put everything up all at the same time, so that it minimizes the disruption to traffic. And once you place the false work over the roadway, then the roadways can be opened up to traffic afterwards. Whether we need to reduce the lanes or not, that's something that can be determined during final design. Chances are we can do it without reducing the lanes, but it does affect the height and of the structure. So there are some kind of interactive things that you need to look at. If you do this, then it affects something else. So those details typically would be worked out during the final design of the bridge.
Okay. Thank you.
You got anything before I chime in? Or should we let him finish?
Not quite. So there are a few things that we want to talk about too, is that there are different colors that, with the steel structure. And again, those would be decided during final design. We are showing 3 different color scheme. One at the top, which is a dark kind of brownish color. It's kind of more rustic. And the one in the middle is kind of mustard yellow, which is a little more bold, right, kind of in your face. Whereas the one towards the bottom is kind of light gray, off-white type color, which is kind of a lot more neutral. And one of the benefits of a more neutral color is if you want to do some nice looking lighting at night, they do work very well. And with the technology that's available now, you can actually do pretty fancy lighting at a relatively low cost, which is an attractive option. Some of the key considerations, and I think some of which we already discussed, is the what happens. Oops, sorry, this is not happening.
So just before you go on, you said the neutral color enhances the light options, but what about, you couldn't do that with the other ones if you wanted to?
So if you have like a dark brown color, for example, if you shine a light on it, it still have a real strong dark brown tone to it. I'm not a color person, but so the more neutral color is just easier to have different light effects.
Is that middle picture the Dublin Bridge?
Yeah, the one in the middle, yes, it's the one in Dublin. Yeah. So the things that we considered as we work through this, and I'm sure that you have considered, also wanted to make sure that these are all looked at, is the different potential environmental impacts. And we have actually talked and have the environmental consultant taken a look at all 3 options, and they were pretty happy that it would stay within what was previously approved under CEQA, and obviously the document needs to be refreshed, but generally they don't see any issues with any one of these 3 options. We talk a little bit about construction complexity, especially in terms of the force work and potential traffic impacts. As I mentioned a little earlier with the butterfly arch, it is a little more complicated in terms of how you erect the structure compared to the other two options. But again, it's not something that's rocket science, and there are a number of contractors in the area who can do that work. So we are not overly concerned about being able to get it constructed right and get it done at a competitive price. Another thing that we look at is the long-term maintenance, right? You don't want to build something that's so expensive to maintain. And generally, none of these bridges have anything that's significantly complex. The only one thing is with the truss arch, because just more services. The painting cost is over the longer term is going to be higher compared to the other two options. So, and then of course the more important part, obviously, is the overall project cost. And so what we've done here is we've put together the probable project cost, including design, construction engineering, the right of way, and we've put an allowance in terms of what we may have to do in terms of dealing with utilities, those that we can actually, especially those that we do not see, which is in the ground. So we either sometimes have to spend money to avoid it, or sometimes we actually have to spend money to relocate them. And all those would be determined during final design.
Can we stay on that a minute? Because that's all I've been thinking about since you started on this is, I mean, the Iron Horse Trail has had, gas lines for aviation under there. And I know there's a sewer line that heads towards Central Sand. I mean, is there one more than the other that might avoid the cost of having to move any of that or do something about it?
I think all three are fairly similar, because what we are really proposing is that they would be placed on the west side of the trail, and most of the more significant utilities are located on the east side. And so we do have some good experience knowing what's in the ground, because we're working on the Bollinger Canyon project, and we've identified all those things, and we've been looking at some of the older drawings that were prepared during the widening of Crow Canyon Road. So we've got some pretty good sense, but again, just relying on paper records is not enough. We do really want to positively identify some of the what we call the high-risk utilities to make sure that we don't, have any unintended event during construction. So what we're doing here is we are making an allowance, because we don't know how much it is. We just want to, hey, this could happen, and we want to make sure that we make a reasonable allowance to account for that in case we do encounter anything. So based on that, there is a range of probable costs for all the three options. And as one can see, the truss arch and the butterfly arch are pretty similar, even though I think the butterfly may be a little cheaper, and then the tie arch tend to be more expensive. But part of that is, as Council Member Perkins noted, it is a longer span. So if you reduce the span somewhat, it's likely going to come down. But we still expect that to be probably the most expensive option of all three. The one thing I do want to note is that the construction cost has not been escalated. Since we don't really have a definitive timeline of when the construction is going to happen. And these days, if I'm any good in predicting inflation, there are a lot of job offers, right? So, so we haven't tried to do that, and that's one thing that we do want to bring to your attention, so that you kind of know the order of magnitude, but also for the purpose of comparing the three options, we just feel that they are all on the same cost basis, so we can make a good informed decision if you are considering cost as one of the factors.
So apart from the cost, is there any difference in the safety-wise?
Safety-wise, they are pretty similar. They are
all similar.
Yeah, I mean, we have to design to a certain standard. Caltrans have some very specific requirements, especially in the sense of, how you deal with earthquake and all that. So, and all that have to be fully engineered during final design.
Deck width is the same?
Yeah, 16 feet, yeah. So they are all apples and apples comparison.
You went to 16 feet on this one?
Same as Bollinger.
So,
I was adamant about Bollinger. This one I'm not. Go ahead, Marisol.
sorry. So all else, safety-wise, it's the same. Time of construction,
Fairly similar.
fairly similar. Only difference you said is that the trust one is going to require more maintenance over time.
Potentially, yeah, because of there's a little more painting that's needed.
And was that factored into the estimate that you gave?
No, the estimate is really for the initial construction.
If you had to give like an estimate approximately on a conservative end, what do you think it would cost more in terms of maintenance, say in 5 or 10 years time or 20 years?
So the paint system these days are really good. And I think we are all best in this area because it's dry and we are inland. So I think a decent paint system probably will last somewhere between 15, 20 years before you've got to do any serious type of repainting. There may obviously be touch-up that's needed occasionally, but we shouldn't have to look at any real significant repainting, every 3 years or anything like that at all. So.
But that repainting, do you know more or less like what that cost comes out to?
No, I don't have that.
But it's
information
very
offhand.
15, 20 years apart. Yeah, it's big intervals.
That's
Yeah.
my expectation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions before we open to the public? Any others?
I've got a couple
ahead, Mark.
questions. So the 2015 conceptual bridge design report, you stated the preference by the community was the tiered arch option. That's also the most expensive one. And I don't know, in my mind, I'm thinking for this particular bridge, as opposed to Bollinger, which is more of an iconic structure, I'm thinking more something that's more practical, but good looking and affordable. And plus I'm a little worried, but that the more expensive, then the longer it's going to take to secure the funding, and then that affects future dollars and the overall cost of the project. It just gets worse and worse. But I guess what my question is the staff looking for an actual decision on a bridge type from us tonight? Because I understand we have to approve some funding as part of this whole discussion tonight to, I think, as part of getting the matching requirement accomplished to get the earmark funding. So I get all that part of it, but it's been 8 years since we got public input on this. And I'm, other than the public comment we're about to hold right now, when else does the public get the opportunity to weigh in, other than 8 years ago on what they want currently, because perhaps the public has changed. Is there an opportunity perhaps to do a workshop, or are we tied to a particular timeline to get our application or to get the grant funding secured on the federal earmark?
There is a timeline, but we still do have time within that timeline to do a variety of things. So I think the primary urgency for moving forward, if you want to use that word, is really just the time value of money and the opportunities for getting additional grants. Once we get the design done, then you start saying, I have a design ready project, and you start looking for those opportunities. So it's really just about getting everything in place to start looking to be able to build it, and the potential of inflationary impacts on our existing money and on the cost of building it. So yes, and I believe that the public input of years past was not even related specifically to a type of arch. Their input was, what general types of bridge are you looking for? And so it was decided to have a arch bridge here. I don't think that they were given this level of detail of different kinds of arches. So that was kind of similar to what happened on the Bollinger process, where it was a cable stay bridge, And then we looked at some costs and came back with some variations on the theme of a cable stay bridge and took that to council, and council made the final decision.
Okay, I mean, I thought I read it a little differently, that the community specifically wanted the tied arch.
The tied arch was the arch option that was shown to them.
Okay. Yes. But in general, they just wanted an arch.
That is my understanding, and that is how the environmental document is written.
Okay, the other question I had was, like on the truss bridge, what's the height of the, from the trail bed surface up to the first kind of horizontal beam? I'm thinking about, I've heard some things about the future use of the Iron Horse Trail and what CCTA might want to do there maybe decades from now, but will that limit options for the use of the trail due to height restriction in the future?
Yeah, so for the truss arch, I think we do have some, actually, you can probably see that in the picture in the middle. There are some cross bracings at the top of the arch of the truss. And generally, I think we shoot for a vertical clearance of about 10 feet. So if we are looking at the typical CCTA autonomous shuttles that has been used in Bishop Ranch, those shouldn't have any problem. But obviously, if there are some much bigger vehicles, then the headroom could be an issue. But with what the CCTA has been working on, that we don't expect to be an issue. And that's also partly why we have 16 feet, is to make sure that, in case those type of transportation mode come through this area, there is enough width on the deck to accommodate that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think to put that in a little bit of perspective, what we were looking at and what we looked at on the Bollinger Bridge was getting a light to medium maintenance vehicle across the bridge without any interference. So it's about getting some kind of a maintenance truck that would have some fairly substantial height on it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Do we have any cards from the public?
I do not have any cards for this item.
We'll open the public comment anyway. Is there anyone that wants to address the council on this item?
If you want to speak, you
No,
need to come up here.
Just wanted to ask if one of these designs is better in the event of an earthquake.
They would all be designed based on the
Okay,
latest.
let's get all the speakers in first, and then we'll get them the answer. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, we'll close the public. Go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, they would all be designed based on the latest requirements and the earthquake data that is available. So in terms of the design, in terms of earthquake safety, they would all essentially be the same.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any written on this? Seeing none, go ahead. Robin, you were about ready to jump in there?
So, yeah, I think if you have any other questions or input, that would be
I just have one last
the
comment.
next step. Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I know, looking at it from the other perspective, if someone's like, say, riding their bike or on a, sometimes we have high gust wind, like winds and things like that. Is any one of them potentially more risky for someone who is riding along the bridge? And that, I mean, I know it's like when I've been on the Golden Gate Bridge, it gets very gusty and my bike's literally swaying out of control. So is there one that's kind of can handle that better and be less of a risk for people who are passing the bridge under those conditions?
Again, it's my experience dealing with these, and I think you could confirm that there's a similar design process as with an earthquake. There are design loads. They're all will be designed to the same wind loading standard and probably have the same kind of effects. I don't think that there's likely to be any kind of tunneling effect or things like that with any of these designs.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting question. But I think the one thing that I would only add is that if you look at the picture that we've got right now at the bottom, right? I mean, it shows the the truss arch, two vertical walls essentially, right? And then you're kind of inside that. So you may say, hey, I feel safer that way. Versus, say, if you look at the butterfly arch, the actual members swing out. So you feel more spacious, but some people, hey, I'd like to be inside a box. I feel safer that way. It's hard to say, but the butterfly arch do give you a sense that is a more open type of structure, because the top of the arch actually swings out, so that you just feel more spacious. And when you are riding a bike towards the kind of near the edge, your elbow is here, right? And with the truss arch, the main members are going to be right there. But with the butterfly arch, the main members are swinging out, so you feel that it's more roomy. So that's one distinction between those two. And I think the Thai arch is fairly similar to the truss arch in that sense.
And the Golden Gate Bridge moves, so that doesn't count.
No, it's very windy and
In
gusty.
fact,
there,
one
it's
thing
scary.
that when we design bridges like that, one thing that we do need to check is the natural frequency of the bridge, to make sure that when the wind blows, it doesn't shake in a certain way. And when people walk across the bridge, say when you've got a couple of people walking in same stride across the bridge, that you want to make sure that it doesn't create a natural frequency problem and the bridge will actually start shaking. So something that will all be addressed during final design.
The Tacoma Narrows Bridge, of course, is the classic
you
example.
go.
I remember that. It's kind of scary.
So which bridge, which is a close one for the Dublin one compared to any of these design? The one which is already done in Dublin on the Iron Horse Trail.
Sorry,
So
It's the
question,
closest to this design.
closest
And
design in Dublin.
the closest it would be the truss arch, the
Truss
first
arch.
one that we showed. So this one would be the closest. So if you imagine that you paint that white and put a couple kind of wavy thing on the side, it will look fairly like the one in Dublin. The Dublin one is a little taller because they have a longer crossing, so they are a little bigger. This one is a little shorter, so it's not as tall. So I think for this one, I think the truss arch is about from the deck level to the top is about 20 feet. The one in Dublin, I think, is maybe a little higher. I don't have the dimension, but it looks higher to me. So.
Just think how much money we could save if we copied it.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Take the designs.
Okay, public comments. It's up to us, guys. Ladies.
I mean, I've got some thoughts on, a couple of the designs, but the real thought is going through my head is I'd still like to see a workshop maybe where the public can have opportunity to comment and we kind of get their feedback as well. But in terms of the truss arch, I like that design. I like the correlation to the railroad bridge look of that, kind of the historical aspect of the Iron Horse Trail. I don't know how many of our current residents would even catch that and think about that. Maybe I'm a little concerned about it's a little bit more stuff, it's potentially
More mass.
visually obstructing more of the hillsides or things like that. So that might be a consideration as well. And then as far as the butterfly arch, I like the simplicity of that and the kind of the streamlined look of it. It's kind of less visually impactful and that sort of thing, and slightly lower cost. Really, the cost is almost a wash between those two options.
Yeah.
I'm kind of throwing out the whole tied arch option in my mind and preferring to go with one of the other two, truss or butterfly. But those are my initial thoughts right now. But again, I personally would like to see a workshop.
I'd like to chime in. Yeah, the extra $5, $6, $7 million associated with the tied arch. I recognize that these numbers today, I guarantee you, will not be the numbers that when the time comes. What we're looking at is kind of a relative nature of bridges and the price difference between them. But we all know, and somebody 2 years, 5 years from now will say, well, we were told it was only going to be $22 million. No, you weren't. I also particularly, I like the truss. I like the opportunity, as you pointed out, that there are some really interesting lighting schemes. We've seen that on the Bay Bridge, and you can do that on this bridge because it has structure to do that. The butterfly arch, an awful lot of it is actually below the deck, particularly as it gets out towards the edges, and there's really not that much structure that's over the roadway above the deck when we look at that one. So it doesn't lend itself as much to those interesting lighting opportunities that we could have. And since those two are essentially the same in price, but I tend to like the truss, and I'd like and I don't disagree, Mark. I think having another charrette moment might be valuable. As a kind of a third option would be a more traditional railroad style as opposed to an arch. The current truss is developed into an arch with the truss members growing as they get towards the middle, whereas in a more standard railroad, it would be a trapezoid. And so I'd like to see would a trapezoid be much more expensive? Probably not. In fact, in some ways, it becomes cheaper because almost all the members are the same length. And so when you're fabricating it, it becomes more uniform in terms of the building all the.
Would it look like the dome?
Well, I'm an engineer. I'm mechanical, not a structural, but I recognize that when you simplify some things, you can reduce the cost. And hopefully, like you said, if you do the deck piece offsite and bring it in and lay them in place, you can lay them all in a given weekend. You shut down the street and you lay them in a weekend. And so I'm inclined to go with the truss, but I'd like to have a option 1A, if you would, as a more railroad style, Iron Horse Trail style.
A little bike there, hang. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I agree. I really am leaning aesthetically. I like the truss, just to be a second. It was very close with the arch, but facing south, the view with the arch was just not very appealing to me. So I mean, for me, that was kind of like, as for in terms of the view, I really like the truss, but I also like the point that Councilmember Perkins just mentioned. There's so much more room with the truss to, create a festive view, for example, during this time of year. And I do like the gray color in particular because it's a little bit more neutral. And as was mentioned earlier in your presentation, it would allow us to use it for other purposes to, aesthetically to beautify the view. And, especially during the holidays, it's a great time to do that. So that would be my preference. Thank you.
Sridhar?
I would also go with the truss architecture because of financially, or we can say economically, as well as if you see aesthetically, they look pretty good. That one looked pretty good, and on top of it, looks like the traffic changes are not much required, right? So when we are doing this construction, there's a less traffic implications. That's also going to, like, if you are doing like 1 year, that is going to have a pretty good impact on our community for their commute. So based on that, and also I heard you mention about the painting going to be more expensive on that one, but if it is not that significant, definitely we'll be covering that within the construction itself, like 23 million, right? So Yeah, I would go with truss. And also, as Council Member Perkins mentioned, that about lighting, that's going to be it's going to be a good feature that we may able to enable in future and use it for our city activities.
I can see our city manager going crazy with the lighting on that bridge. No, he won't touch that. He just does it in the
Yeah,
road
East Bay
sign down.
Regional Park District is closed at night.
He won't get any other work done, but he'll get the lighting on the bridge looking great. You mentioned the paint. We see the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge being painted constantly. We have to recognize those are in possibly the worst environment for paint and steel. And here we are out in a dry area that gets, what, 1/4 of the amount of rain and 1/4 the amount of humidity. And so, yeah, steel will be affected, but with today's high quality epoxy paints, you can get 20 years out of them. And so we'll just have to put that in the Public Works budget, Robin.
Take it out of the can.
Yeah, and, or we just get everybody out there on the weekend with a can, right?
On the public outreach, I know you are running on the tight timeline, but is it possible that can we run a survey on Nextdoor or something like that so that even community get a chance to pitch in?
Sure, and I'd ask for a very specific direction as to what options to show with this additional outreach process. I'm hearing 2 trusses and a butterfly, so truss 1 and truss 1A and a butterfly option as the public options. Because I just want to be clear, we're not opening it up for other designs. It's what was presented tonight with that 1 and 1A option.
And in the survey, if you want to put a price in there, or a cost, say 20 to 25 million and leave it big and broad and say all 3 are essentially the same.
Okay.
So that people aren't saying, well, geez, this one's 100,000 cheaper. We don't want to go there.
And also it will be nice if you can mention a little bit about traffic implications so that people will start hitting you on that.
Just tell them you're going to close Crocania for 3 years.
Oh, yeah. We already did that. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that, am I?
Unless you want real attention.
Yeah.
It's signed Robin Bartlett.
Social attention.
Yes.
As long as Robin's here to take the heat, we're good.
Yes.
He's been here to see.
So it sounds like, well, actually, Mayor
You need a
Hudson, I don't
motion,
think
yeah.
I had heard what your preference was.
We would like to
think
get
everybody's-
oh, gosh. You mean, we have to decide?
So
I think
if
everybody said that.
Yeah, to get 2 million in the CF.
Can we give how quick can you get a survey out and can you have something back by
That's-
the 28th?
Well, no, I don't think that would be, well, it depends. So if you're talking just a Nextdoor survey, then that's possible, and that's if the consultant can develop that 1A concept within the time to get it out. If you're talking a workshop, now we're looking at, I would push for, as soon as we get the rendering from the consultant, scheduling that workshop right away, hopefully January, February timeframe. As we discussed tonight, every month that we delay could be adding tens, if not hundreds, $100,000s of dollars to the bridge based on what we experienced in Bollinger. And we want to make sure that we get the design complete so we can go out and have a shovel-ready project to look for more funding. So time is of the essence, but I would encourage that if the council directs to go the workshop option, we schedule that as soon as we possibly can while doing the Nextdoor survey at the same time.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
one-
not tied to the workshop per se. I'm more tied to seeking additional public input on the options before we make a final decision.
So if that's a Nextdoor poll or other online polling, we will work with the consultant and try and get it back as soon as we can. I don't know if that would be the 28th or
So I think that
the
the
15th.
part of the problem is if we want to show the renderings, then we don't have a rendering
Right.
for the railroad trust type option, and that would take several months to develop. And otherwise, we would not be showing an apples to apples,
Couple of months to get
do
a
a verbal.
rendering?
yeah.
Oh.
I thought it was just,
can you show them as line drawings? All three as line type drawings as opposed to picture type renderings? Quicker or what? We don't want to.
Yeah, that's the thing.
February. I mean, we might as
Right.
well have a workshop and do that.
What we could do is if we show a truss bridge and then describe that it could be designed to look more like a railroad truss more in the description of the survey. And then if the truss is selected, then we can develop that 1A option later. Because I'm hearing a lot of truss tonight. I'm not hearing a lot of butterfly. And if that happens with the public as well, then we can just do the next door or other digital outreach survey and then say later on, this could be refined to look more like a railroad truss.
Is it safe to say that either truss is going to be around that budget of $2 million? So, I mean, if we wanted to do the resolution tonight, we could, just to set up what the budget number would be?
If there is no decision on a design tonight, either way, it would have to be continued to another meeting. So,
Okay, so you're talking about continuing this
to another meeting once we receive the input.
You can put something like that on.
Yeah. Sure.
I see some lobbying going on.
No, I just pointed out that there's, if you type in bridge truss images,
Yeah.
you can pull up bridge truss images and you can pick one that looks kind of like what it would be, but it wouldn't be an image on
An actual
Canyon Road.
rendering, right?
I mean, so you'd have something.
Yeah.
something like
We
that.
might be able to find a similar bridge that is designed like the angular truss and you put that up as an example. But if there is interest in bringing it back by the 28th or the 15th, that would be the route to go, as a quicker online
Till the
survey.
28th is-
Or, and then the council would need to continue it to a future date. I don't think we need to do we need to do a date certain?
We don't need to do a date certain.
Okay. Is that the feeling that's going on here?
I move we continue this item to a future council meeting and direct staff to prepare a online survey.
I'll
with
second
three
that.
options, 1A, and 2.
I'll
You gonna
second
move it?
that. I'll second that.
Oh, I'm gonna move, I'm sorry.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Gonna vote in here, or we set? Okay. I thought the number was good already, so I don't see anything change. My bigger concern is gonna be what's underground, if anything has to be moved, or whether or not
gonna be
they'll
the
let you
same
put the weight on that.
We're dealing with it now on Bollinger, so
Yeah.
it'll be, yeah.
That's all we ever heard about for years when we were trying to get that thing going. Okay, so is it 5-0?
It was, yes.
Just hit the button.
We hit the button?
Did you already hit the button?
Yeah, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next item?
Item 9.2, public hearing, introduction of ordinance, next in line, amending chapter 13, firearms of Division B7 Peace, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare of Title B Regulations of the San Ramon Municipal Code to require the safe storage of firearms in a residence. Staff report by Martin License, City Attorney, and Denton Carlson, Police Chief.
Oh, tag team, okay. Who's up first? Martin, you got it?
I'll take it initially, and good evening, Mayor and Council. You may recall that during the summer and early fall, the city received multiple requests, both by email and through public comments, for the city to follow what other cities have been doing nearby, which is to adopt a safe firearms storage ordinance. That ordinance would encourage safe storage of firearms within residences in San Ramon and establish penalties for gun owners who fail to store their guns safely. In response to those requests and under the direction of the council, we have reviewed several gun safety ordinances from other jurisdictions and drafted the ordinance that's before you tonight. Last month, I presented this proposed ordinance to the policy committee. Several members of the public spoke in favor of that ordinance, and we did have one citizen speak against it. The committee generally spoke in favor of the ordinance, and I'll let the committee speak for itself on this. But they did direct staff to bring it here so that the full city council could consider it for adoption. A little bit of background. It's currently illegal under California Penal Code to store a firearm negligibly. Quote, if the person knows or reasonably should have known that a child is likely to gain access to the firearm without the permission of the child's parent or legal guardian, close quote. In other words, if you own a gun or keep a gun in your house, you have to take reasonable precautions to prevent a child from accessing the gun, but only if you would have reasonably known that that child could access the gun. So there's a lot of ambiguity there, and that's where this proposed new ordinance comes in. It eliminates the question of whether a gun owner should have reasonably known that a child or some other prohibited person was likely to access that firearm. It requires safe storage of the firearm, whether there's a chance of the child being present or not. So as it states in the report, Contra Costa County, Antioch, Pleasanton, Walnut Creek have all adopted similar ordinances. There are variations in the language, but the intent and the prohibitions are the same in all of these jurisdictions. So if the council elects to adopt this ordinance, we'll add it to the firearms provisions of Title B, Division B7 of our municipal code. But while there is benefit to having certainty about what is legal and what is not legal when it comes to firearm storage, the council should be aware that the practical applicability of this proposed ordinance is limited. Any violation of this ordinance would take place within a private home, so the police department would not be able to observe actual violations except under very narrow circumstances. The ordinance will not allow the police to go into private homes on suspicion of a violation, and it does not authorize the city to perform inspections or anything of the sort for safe storage. So if the PD does cite someone under this ordinance, it would most likely happen after an incident with the gun has taken place. So in essence, the most positive effect of the ordinance, if the council adopts it, would be that it would eliminate the uncertainty that's inherent in the current state law. Gun owners would benefit by having a clearer guideline about what is lawful storage and what is unlawful storage. And for now, this concludes my presentation, and I'm here to take any questions. And as you can see, Chief Carlson is also here to
Questions of staff, or should we listen? Denton, you got something you got to add to this? Okay.
I have some questions for the chief. So let me give just a couple of scenarios and then ask you a couple of questions. We get a call for a domestic violence, and doesn't matter whose party is aggrieved or any of those things, but officers respond. And do officers have the right to enter the house under the conditions of a domestic violence 911 call?
Well, I think it would depend on the exigency of the circumstances. It would depend on whether or not there's a threat to great bodily injury to someone inside. It would be based on the officer's observations when they first arrived at the location. If they could hear screaming inside, they could hear anything like that, they would have the right to go inside for the safety and the protection of someone's life.
Okay, so they're standing at the door is opened, there's no noise, but they see someone in the back has now got a great big bruise under their eye, and the other person, they notice that the knuckles are bruised. Do they have the right to enter under those circumstances?
Sure, and it'd be for the investigation of a crime that has the potential to continue and be ongoing.
Okay. Under those circumstances, they go in the house, and on the kitchen counter or something, they see a small arm. Unlocked, no trigger guard. Would that be a violation of this ordinance?
Well, actually, we would have the right to seize that firearm regardless of the ordinance if we determined a domestic violence crime had occurred.
Okay.
And so that's stipulated where we can seize firearms, and then the person would have to petition to the court. We work with the city attorney fairly regularly on these types of cases.
Okay.
Not to make it sound like we're doing this every week, but it does happen. And they would have to petition the court, and the court would have to grant their return of firearms.
Do the officers know when responding if a firearm is registered at a home?
It would depend on whether or not we have the information of who resides at the home, that person's name. We can run guns registered to based on the information that we have, but we would have to have that individual's name, date of birth, those types of things to be able to check for that.
Okay. Somebody,
Can I just ask a follow-on to
please.
your question?
Sure.
In that same scenario, they see the weapon on the counter or whatever, and you could go and take action based on the circumstances or whatever. Does that go as far as searching the entire house, say the garage, or a place that's not open and visible that there might be a weapon? It's an actual search of the house based on what is going on?
So
in that
we would
domestication?
have to have information that there were other firearms within the home. We wouldn't have the right to just search the entire home just on our own free will. In essence, we would have to have, if one of the involved parties said, you know,
he's got 4 guns in the garage.
exactly, then we would have the legal authority to go look for those.
Okay. Search warrants. Is there circumstances under which either anonymous or non-anonymous person could call PD, call 911 with information regarding firearms unsafely stored at a house because their kids play together or something like that?
In this circumstances and as applicable based on this ordinance, we would not have the authority to write a search warrant. No, this is an infraction, and it's deemed as an infraction based on the city's municipal code. So we would not have the authority to write a search warrant based on information that was given to us verbally. And this would apply to just about any crime, actually. Even if it was classified as a crime that we could write a search warrant for, we would have to develop additional information on top of someone just saying that this is happening inside the house. As you could imagine, how that could be used inappropriately in so many different circumstances, where someone could just call us and say, hey, this X, Y, and Z is going on inside this house. We can't just write a search warrant based on that and enter into someone's home. I mean, there's a respect given legally to someone's home and what they can do inside, and our authority to enter into that home. So we would have to develop significant additional information for any crime to be able to write a search warrant to gain access into someone's home.
So similarly, so say an ex-spouse calls up and says, hey, my spouse has got weapons in the house, unsecured, and my kid's going over there, it's his weekend or her weekend, and it's an unsafe environment. I need you guys to take care of that.
Well, in that circumstances, it'd be something that would be violating a law that already exists. Because what you're describing there would fall under the California Penal Code, and what already exists is the safe storage of firearms when a child is reasonably believed to have access or be present or anything along those lines. So those laws already exist.
But that's just based on a phone call.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the violation of that law wouldn't even be applicable to this ordinance here.
Oh, I see.
Is that law already exists. If there is a child reasonably going to be present at the location, firearms have to be stored. That exists in California law already. And what we would do in those types of circumstances, we would take the steps to ensure that the child's safety is there. We would go to the home, whether we would have the legal authority to get in based on the phone call. We would try to discuss with the person at the front door saying, hey, these were the concerns that were relayed to us. We want to make sure that the child is safe. You're talking about a child endangerment case. But again, we would have to develop something more than someone just giving us a call and saying this is happening. And we would have to go far beyond that. And then we would have to present it to a judge and have the judge agree that the evidence we're presenting to him is sufficient to establish that the crime is occurring above and beyond an infraction of this ordinance. And we're talking now, we're going down into crimes that aren't above and beyond what this ordinance would implicate. But we would have to establish that to a judge, and the judge would have to grant us the authority.
So there's the whole issue about doxing. You probably live in at least some trepidation of somebody making that phone call that the SWAT has to respond, doxing kind of things that happen across the country.
And we've had it happen here multiple times where people have called using spoofed phone numbers saying this is something heinous is occurring at this house. We've had that happen here in San Ramon. But we take the necessary precautions, and now it's something that is in the mind of peace officers as they respond through agencies all over because it's happened so much. If something sounds like it is really spectacular and above and beyond, there's always that little voice in the back of the head now for responding officers saying, hey, we have to make sure that this is legitimate. And we have to establish that again, because it's with tragic consequences.
Yeah.
It's
one in
happened
what,
so
Kansas
often all over
City,
the country.
The guy that got shot. Yes, okay.
Any further questions before ask for a motion?
No, let's have public comment, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I've got
I have
some questions.
Okay.
Marisol, go ahead.
Marisol.
Yeah, so the only other question, what other cities do you know have adopted this resolution so far?
Well, I think there are some listed in the staff report here. Off the top of my head, I believe Walnut Creek, Antioch, Dublin may have. I think the county of Contra Costa adopted it as well.
And historically, have these measures, do you think, reduced the likelihood of someone the firearms getting into the wrong hands?
I don't know that that's been established yet. I think a lot of these ordinances are brand new and just been within a year or so that they've been enacted by the county and the municipalities. So I don't know whether or not it would really make a difference. And I don't know of any data that exists that would demonstrate that it does make a significant difference.
And
If I
as-
could add to that, just I did do a search for data that would support one way or the other, whether there's been any significant drops in incidents. And I've just been unable to find any sample size would be way too small at this point to
It's
see if
kind of
there's
like
any
proving a
statistics
negative,
supporting.
you know, how do you
Right.
prove something was prevented if it didn't happen?
And right now, as it stands, if we adopt it, there is really, I mean, other than notifying the public that it's been enacted, right? There's really, we don't have an enforcement process in place that would, per se, right?
Well, yeah, again, it would have to be, most of these would take place, if there are any citations under this ordinance, they would take place usually after the fact, when and if the PD enters a home for another reason and then happens to see a weapon that's been unsafely stored.
So it'd be more consequential if they haphazard, if they happen to see it, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to introduce
So,
the
Oh, I think
go
Sridhar
ahead.
and,
I just want to mention, I got all my answers during my policy committee meeting, so
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm covered with that. Yeah.
Well, I just generally,
I move-
just if I could, I got a couple questions for Chief too, but, you know, generally, just because some other cities around us do something, I don't think that really means that we need to be doing something. I certainly don't accept that with what my children used to come to me with, some things that they wanted to do. But our actions that we take really ought to be based on the applicability for our community specifically. So I guess what I'm really looking for are some statistics that are specific to San Ramon. I see the statistics in the staff report that apply to the United States in general. I know California has stricter gun laws than anywhere else. In fact, I've done a little research just on suicides and firearms-related suicides versus other and that sort of thing. California is much lower than most of the other states in that regard with firearms-related suicides. So I guess the question is, do we have any data in San Ramon in terms of, say, over the last 3 to 5 years of gun-related incidents that resulted from the improper storage of weapons, and you know, whether it's homicides or suicides, domestic issues, injuries, intentional or accidental discharges, those sorts of things. What are we seeing in San Ramon that is sort of driving, you know, our actions right now?
Sure. And so one of the things is, as the city attorney and I were discussing this ordinance, and it had been brought forth to the city as a proposal from some of the people who are strongly in support of this, I conducted a significant amount of research into incidents that had happened in San Ramon, and I couldn't find an incident in which the safe gun storage or anything applicable in this ordinance would have changed an outcome, if that makes sense. I could not find even theft of firearms. I was able to find several firearms, one that just took place maybe 5 weeks ago, in which the firearm was properly secured in accordance with what this ordinance would propose, and it was still stolen. So I couldn't come up with anything where it would have changed an outcome, or any unfortunate circumstances involving suicide. Fortunately, we don't have a high amount of those involving firearms, and so those are pretty easy to research. We didn't have any that I could find that would be applicable, or this ordinance would have changed the outcome.
Okay. I guess maybe the other thought, and I'll probably come up with a question in this thought here in a second. But, you know, I'm all for, you know, public safety, and even if we can do something to save one life, you know, I'm kind of all for that. But as was mentioned in the staff report, you know, most gun owners are doing the responsible thing, and they're securing their weapons properly. They've had training, they've received education, they know how to handle weapons safely and store them safely. So I'm kind of left to wonder, you know, how this ordinance would change behavior. And let's just say it's the behavior of the people that don't obey our laws. For example, is it just the disincentive maybe that there's a $100 fine and an infraction? Is that going to change people's behavior? Because, you know, I'm just kind of wondering, you know, in that regard. And then I will say that, you know, there may be some circumstances where somebody inherits granddad's weapons. You know, they don't have the training and the education on safe handling and storage and things like that. So I'm really left to wonder how, now, if we pass this ordinance, how are we going to educate the public, not only in terms of that there is an ordinance, but also on some of that education, and also what the California approved, you know, safety devices are. So they're not just going on Amazon and, you know, getting the bike lock or something like that to run through the trigger. They're getting something that's approved by DOJ in the state of California. How do we educate people so we can actually change behavior and maybe save a life?
Well, and I think the one circumstance that you mentioned there that really is applicable is, let's say someone does inherit a firearm. It may not come with a gun safety mechanism or a DOJ, Department of Justice approved gun safety system or cable or whatever it may be. Any firearm that's purchased, and I believe this goes all the way back several decades, any firearm purchased in the state of California, a Department of Justice certified firearm safety device comes with the purchase of that gun. So everyone who buys a gun gets a Department of Justice locking mechanism for safety purposes. As to your comment about what behaviors are going to change, I do think you're right. Responsible gun owners lock up their guns. They are safe with them. They store them properly. I don't think that is any behaviors are going to change. People who are responsible gun owners keep their guns in a safe place and locked up and secured. I don't know that an ordinance is going to change the behaviors of those who don't. But again, that's purely speculation on my part. Maybe it would. I just, based on almost 25 years in law enforcement, I don't know that it would.
Yeah, it just has me thinking that, given what you said, that, you know, if we can't change behavior, then, you know, this almost sounds like it's a kind of a feel-good ordinance to, you know, we're going to get on the bandwagon. We don't have any enforceability. There's really no teeth, and it frankly puts our cops in an uncomfortable position to respond to calls and things like that and chase down complaints. So I think if we're going to go with this ordinance, then I think the education piece of this, especially on the appropriate types of safety devices and the fact that there is a requirement, I think that's going to have to be a key component if we move this forward.
If I may say couple more things. So the purpose of asking the cities is not to make my decision personally, but it was to help inform the public about what cities have adopted and whether or not they consider it to be comparable cities. The second part is, it sounds to me like after all the questions that have been asked, is that what it really is preventative. It's not something that we can say, oh, it's happened to us, but it could be potentially preventative. There's no harm done. If everybody's doing what they're doing, nothing's going to happen to them anyway. So the other, but if you think about a situation, if someone is in a state of crisis and they know that there's a gun that they can access, if it's made more difficult for them to have access to get to that gun, it buys them time to rethink what they're thinking of doing. We know that for a fact. If we can stall, it will buy them time. So that's just something to think about, I think, in this situation, which hasn't been mentioned.
Yeah, and one thing to that, and again, I'm by no means advocating one way or the other. I'm here to provide facts for it. But there is a flip side to that as well, is that if someone is in defense of their life or their property based on an intruder, and the fortunate part for us in San Ramon is we don't face those circumstances very often. But whether or not it would delay the person protecting themselves is a consideration. And again, not advocating one way or the other, but just stating that those circumstances could potentially exist.
And if I've heard correctly, when women have had firearms, oftentimes that's actually been turned around and used on them, correct?
Well, I'm not sure where that,
statistically,
I wouldn't be able to reference that. I'm not sure what that would, the data behind that.
So if we store the guns in a storage, so for the accessible time lag, if you say for the protection, what I heard is that the biometric gun storages, that should be pretty quick to access the weapons if they in need, right? So
if you have a biometric
system. So
but if someone you're in a high stress environment and you're trying to put a small key that you're trying to find somewhere and put it in a lock and pull the cable through the magazine chamber and let the slide forward and do all those things, it's not easy. They're designed not to be simple. The biometric one, but then you're adding the cost factor associated with that and those factors too. But a simple trigger guard too would be compliant as well. Yeah. But again, you're dealing in a high stress environment and someone trying to get a key out and trying to open something and remove it and do all those factors. So again, not advocating one way or the other, just making sure that the information is there and provided.
See, every law in that case, we always come up with the laws because there are good people and then there is bad people, right? So if we think that, okay, everybody's following the orders and ordinances, then why we need our ethics, or then we don't need any laws at all. But in this case, the reason is we need to protect the people so that if there is any bad actor, even one single incident that happens can hurt our residents, that's not acceptable, right? So that's one of the things I want to make sure. It's not like, oh, we had these incidents, then only we will take an action. Instead of that, we want to look at this more like a preventive action that can put little bit more regulation on people, how they are using their arms. So it's not like we want to wait something happen and then we'll enact on them. We cannot wait on that.
At this time, I'd like to move to open the public hearing and introduce the ordinance, waive the reading, read by title only of the ordinance next in line.
I second that.
Any further discussion? Let's get okay, we'll open the public here. Wait, we got to take a vote on it first. Yeah. Can I do it with a voice vote, or you need to hear all the?
Now you're going to get it anyway.
Thanks, God.
Okay.
We're going to keep you sitting here.
Yeah, you go.
Okay, looks like everybody wants to introduce the ordinance.
Yeah, and open the public hearing.
And open the public hearing. So, we have any cards?
I have 2 speaker cards. Richard Adler.
Mayor Hudson and Vice Mayor.
Can you use the microphone, please?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Got to get with the program. Mayor Hudson, Vice Mayor Armstrong, and city council members. As a 26-year resident and homeowner in San Ramon, I'm urging you to pass the safe gun storage ordinance. And there are those that will say that we already have too many laws on the books and that this is governmental overreach in trying to control what happens inside our own homes. But to those arguments, I would say that this ordinance is not a new law, and all it is trying to do is clarify the language and close the loophole in the existing state penal code, section 25100. And they will say that the law-abiding owners already keep their guns locked away. I thank those owners who do that, but I also point out that this ordinance should not impact them at all. What it does do is make sure that all guns are locked and secured in DOJ-approved locks, not just those guns in homes where we think a child may have access to it. And to be clear, no one is going to come into our homes looking for unsecured guns. This ordinance only comes into play if an unsecured gun is found during the course of some other police involvement. As we've seen, unfortunately, over the last month in Lewiston, Maine, no community, no matter how quiet and safe it may seem on the surface, is free from gun violence. An incident like one of these tragedies does not only destroy the families that are affected, but it really destroys the entire community in a sense that it destroys the peace and safety that has taken us years to build in just a moment. In San Ramon, we've had cases where schools have had to be on lockdown and placed on high alert. And I asked, what if an unsecured gun was available? And I know Councilmember Rubio mentioned some possible scenarios, and these would possibly include a break-in where an unsecured gun was stolen and used in some other crime. And it could involve a person with suicidal ideation who found an unsecured gun. And I think it would be difficult to sleep with the thought that we might have been able to do something to prevent even one loss of life. Of course, the ordinance is not going to end gun violence, but it is a step in the right direction. And cities and towns around us are passing similar ordinances to close the loopholes. The Contra Costa Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a similar ordinance in the unincorporated areas of the county. The cost of gun violence is not just psychological trauma and an emotional burden.
We need you to wrap up, please.
Okay, but there's also a financial cost of over $1 billion spent on medical needs alone. So I urge you to pass this ordinance, and I thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker, please.
Eva Harris.
Hello, I'll be quick. I'm just here to support the ordinance. I'm a San Ramon resident, a mother of 3, grandmother of 1. I am also a gun owner. So this does not impact me because I am responsible. We do safely store our firearm. I think what this does is it clarifies the language in the event of a tragedy, unfortunately. So I thank the city attorney for your due diligence on the language and presenting this forward. It really holds anyone accountable, and it clarifies the language. So in the event there is a tragedy. So I'll just be quick. I support this ordinance, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Gary Shaban.
Here. Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. I believe in securing firearms, but you're not going to convince people who don't do it to do it. It's not going to happen. The ordinance is going to change their personal view. What are you going to do about my kitchen knives or my baseball bat? Anything can be used to kill somebody with if somebody wants to do that. So if you go forward with this, I'm not sure how it's going to change anything at all with regards to who keeps their guns safe and who doesn't. After the fact is when you're going to find out. We don't have a lot of statistics on that. So if we have a law now already on the books, why do we need another one to follow? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next speaker, please.
That was the last speaker card I received. We did receive 7 written public comments regarding this item as well.
And we have copies of those? Yes. Okay. Do we need a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Pretty quick over there. Okay, the public hearing is closed. There we go. I want you to reach over here and get it.
I could. I don't want to.
So
Go ahead.
I'd like to kind of just say, now that we've closed public comment, I'd say before we make any kind of a motion or talk about continuing or adopting this at a future date or something, I just want to make sure it's not just on a consent calendar in the future, and that we, if necessary, a revised staff report with some additional San Ramon specific data, and then another opportunity for public comment. We didn't have a whole lot of public comment on this, which kind of surprises me, and that's okay. But I think the opportunity for more public comment to help us make an informed decision. It's an emotional and a potentially divisive subject, and I hope the majority of the council members will agree with me on not just having this on consent when we move to the next meeting for consideration of adoption.
Wouldn't that normally come under right before unfinished business, adoption of an ordinance?
This can come up either way, so we can certainly put it on the
Regular
old
agenda.
business part of the calendar.
Unfinished business?
Unfinished.
Yeah. Good. With that, I'll move we set the adoption, set the ordinance for adoption at the next city council meeting on November 28th as a unfinished business item.
At least for consideration.
For consideration.
For consideration, right, okay.
I second that.
Actually, before we have the vote, we have not had a reading as of yet. So if you want to do that now, or you can put that off until adoption, but that way we don't have to remember to do so.
Yeah, please do it now.
But read the title?
The title, yes.
All right, I'll read the title. Okay, so, all right. Amending Chapter 8, Firearms of Division B7, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare of Title B Regulations of the San Ramon Municipal Code to require the safe storage of firearms in a residence. Okay. And we get to vote. There we go.
You all good?
Okay.
Blue?
And then through the mayor, just
Yes, go ahead.
Dave's vote, Mayor Hudson's
Oh.
vote, please.
You can pass your vote on to the clerk and she'll amend it.
This is just to bring it back, yes.
I just want to make sure that that the chief and I have clear direction on what kind of statistics you're looking for, and I don't know if the
There may
chief
not
has-
be any.
Well, or a statement as to what he testified here, so that's in the written record.
Okay, and as relates specifically to San Ramon,
San
then?
Ramon instance.
Okay.
In response to the question I asked.
Very good, thank you.
Good. Okay. So it's going to come back the next meeting. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Next item.
Item 10, city manager and city council member comments and matters initiated.
The highlight of the evening.
All right, thank you. And also, under this item, we have 10.1 discussion of the cancellation of the December 26th meeting.
This will be
So
a short one.
Yeah, yeah, that's, I guess, unless the council would like to meet the day after Christmas, that would be
Or we can
canceled.
eat on Christmas.
Yeah, well, there you go. So the only items, other than that item 10.1 of canceling the December 26th meeting, which I'm taking as a yes, right? I do have 3 items to mention. One is the soft opening of pickleball courts at Central Park. So we haven't widely advertised that yet, but we've had a successful 4 courts open, and they're very popular. You can walk by any time, and dare I classify it as hear the dulcet tones of pickleball clacking back and forth. So that's very interesting and very popular, and wanted to do a special mention about that. The other item that I wanted to mention is on November 4th, as all of you were in golf carts at the time, we had our 40th anniversary light parade, which was, I would classify it as a resounding success. Approximately 1,400 people were in the parade, and an estimated 5,000 were watching. So I believe that was a very good turnout, and I want to thank PD and Public Works, and in particular Parks and Community Services for their all-hands effort to pull this off. It's not an easy task, organizing and conducting a parade, but I think it went off without a hitch, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that soon in your comments. And the final item that I wanted to mention is that on Saturday, December 2nd, is the annual Bah Humbug 5K Fun Run Walk and Kids Dash, and you can find more information and sign up information on our city website. So that's the next big event in San Ramon, is the Bah Humbug Run. With that, that ends my comments.
How much money for anyone that beats the mayor?
There you go.
Okay, Marisol, you want to start us off this time? Go
Sure,
ahead.
sure. Thank you, Mayor. So, wow, it feels like forever. October 25th, we had our policy committee meeting to discuss the firearms safe storage issue, which was sort of the preemptive step to bringing it here to the council today. October 30th, I went to the infrastructure committee meeting where we, with Vice Mayor Armstrong, and where we discussed the terrace room patio and having like a canopy there to provide some shade during events. We chose an option 3, which was, we thought was best for a runoff in terms of managing runoff and wind, and also any debris that may fall. Just because it had a peak in the way it was designed. And that was option 3 in a beige color for aesthetic purposes. That same, and then let's see, on November 2nd, there was the Iron Horse Village project and the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference. And on November 4th was the San Ramon 40th anniversary, as mentioned, the light parade. Everybody here was there. Oh, I forgot to mention, importantly, October 31st was, we had the San Ramon employee Halloween party. And everybody, well, our city manager did a great job getting that coordinated and finding a great costume himself. And then let's see, November 8th, I attended the EDAC meeting where we received a presentation on economic development 101, the history of EDAC, and an overview of our 2024 goals and objectives. We closed out by discussing whether or not, we wanted to continue with the committee, and if so, with what frequency. Then we had later in the evening, myself again and Vice Mayor Armstrong attended the 3rd annual Power of Giving celebration by the Tri-Valley Nonprofit Fund, which was a wonderful event and for a great purpose. On November 10th, I, like all of us here, were in attendance at the Christina Yamaguchi Holiday Ice Rink opening. Thank you.
Yes, since the last meeting, I met, we had the CCTA, Contra Costa Transportation Authority. I'm the chair of the planning committee, and we discussed Measure J, growth management plan, compliance, and San Pablo is proposing a medical appointment transportation program. They found that in their area that a substantial number of medical appointments are missed because people don't have transportation to get to them. San Pablo is a very different community than San Ramon. Library Foundation, they're quite healthy. They had a very good month with their book sales. They continue to have great success with book sales, and I hope people are continuing to support them. They're having a jazz concert on December the 2nd. I forgot to write down the name of the performer, but this particular performer, they tell me, is widely recognized. They've already have 108 sold tickets. So if you don't have your ticket, want to get it now. LAFCO, I'm on the board of LAFCO, which is the Local Agency Formation Committee. And the big topics were the Alamo R7 County Service Area, activation of latent powers. They wanted the authority to use some of their money to do landscape maintenance on their trees that line their streets, an extra $3,000 a year for their municipal, what do we call it, MAC? It's a Municipal Advisory Committee, that's it. And they want the authority to establish a community center, either through lease, purchase, or construction. It was approved 7-0. They generate a few $1,000,000 a year through their CSA, and they've been running a surplus for more than a dozen years. So they have about $4 million in reserves, and so they have plenty of money to manage their additional things. The second item was the dissolution of the Alamo Lafayette Cemetery District. That one's going to be deferred to a later meeting. There's the old cemetery in Alamo, and there's a comparable one in Lafayette. It's managed by the cemetery district, of which a tiny corner of San Ramon is actually a part of the district. Most of Danville, all of Diablo, parts of Walnut Creek and Alamo, and Lafayette. We looked at our schedule for the next year and our budget for the following year. We had a traffic board of directors meeting yesterday in school district office. We talked about some incidents on school buses, and then we discussed the possibility of changing routes, and we're getting a report from TJKM, which is a traffic consultant, and their report will be available for our next meeting. So that's, oh, and of course we were there for Mr. Yamaguchi's thing, and we had a finance committee meeting. So the finance committee meeting was kind of routine, though. All right.
Okay. Sridhar, then Vice Mayor Armstrong. Unless you want to switch, trade for draft picks.
Sounds good. On October 23rd, attended San Ramon Historic Foundation. We got updates on their events. Hope you all chalk it down on your calendars. It's tree decorating on November 27th. That's going on, and holiday on the farm December 9th, and craft feed January 27, 2024. And then they debriefed about their successful October Fest and also sheep sharing. Also, they shared some of their updates on membership. If you know someone who is interested in joining San Ramon Historic Foundation, please advise them how important it is and good to be part of that group. And then on November 4th, attended our, actually before November 4th, let me touch base on our policy committee meeting. November 25th, attended policy committee meeting along with Council Member Rubio. We touch base, reviewed on gun storage ordinance. That's the one which we reviewed today. And then on the community side, November 4th, attended Discovery Counseling Dandiya event. That is to fundraise as well as to bring awareness about mental health awareness within the community. It was very well attended. The tickets were sold out. They got around 600 plus attendees for that event. So hopefully we'll get more, bring more awareness within the community about the efforts that our city as well as our nonprofit organizations within the city providing these mental health awareness programs. And then on November 10th, again, I attended Ice Rink Open at Bishop Ranch along with our council members, and it was fun. That's pretty much. Thank you.
All right. Okay. October 28th, I participated in the End Alzheimer's Walk that was over at Bishop Ranch, sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association. Remember, we gave them a proclamation back in June, but they had their walk here in San Ramon. Great event, a fundraiser for them. On the 1st of November, I attended the San Ramon Symphonic Band presentation, a Star Wars concert. It was really good over at the Doherty Valley Performing Arts Center, one of the many different events coming up here in the holiday season. So check out the Doherty Valley Performing Arts Center schedule and all the different arts activities that we got coming up. On the 3rd of November, I presented some the President's Volunteer Service Awards to a lot of students. Some of them were Doherty Valley High School students and some Cal High students. These are students who had done some significant volunteer work in the community, local community, as well as in places like Costa Rica and Nepal and China. And there's a place called the Ivy Max Academy over in Pleasanton that had put them in for the President's Volunteer Service Awards. And then you mentioned the Light Parade, fantastic event. Yeah. Looking forward to results of the community survey. Great job for the entire city. As was said many times, it takes a village. Well, it definitely took everybody to pull that off, but great job. Also on the 4th, prior to the parade, I attended the annual Holiday Boutique. This is a fundraiser that the Senior Foundation puts on. Very successful. They made over $7,000 at that fundraiser. I know my wife enjoyed it. She was like a kid in a candy shop, and I know my wallet was a little bit lighter at the end of that event. On the 5th, I attended the Diwali event over at City Center, which was a lot of fun. On the 7th of November, I attended the Veterans Day ceremony at the Board of Supervisors Chambers in Martinez. Had a great speaker there, Jim Hill. He's a Vietnam vet. Part of the ceremony was also to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. As Marisol mentioned, we had the Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance Awards on the 8th of November, and I had the privilege to present the Lifetime Achievement Award to Susan Houghton. Already mentioned the Christy Yamaguchi Holiday Ice Rink opening. Let's see. Other Veterans Day events included the Open Space Advisory Committee has one of their led hikes. They sponsor hikes throughout the year. They did one for Veterans Day in honor of Veterans Day, and it was on Iron Horse Trail. A lot of fun. And then I followed that with a pancake breakfast at the Veterans Memorial Building in Danville. They had a great speaker there, a guy named James Van Often. He was a Navy Top Gun pilot and a Vietnam vet. And he was also a NASA astronaut that flew on the Space Shuttle Challenger and the Space Shuttle Discovery. And let's see, in terms of meetings, just yesterday, the Open Space Advisory Committee meeting, they talked about the results of the Open Space Advocates Forum survey that had gone out. And based on the input from that, they're going to table doing a forum until a later date to be determined. And they also went through and reviewed accomplishment or what still needs to be done in terms of their annual goals. And then I went to the Senior Foundation meeting. They talked about the Holiday Boutique. They talked about the Christmas lighting here at City Hall, which I think is on the 29th of November. I think is what they put out.
28,
Yeah. But anyway, it's coming up. And then also last night, I attended the teen council meeting, and very interesting discussion, presentation by a couple of folks from a company called Elite Swim. They teach swim classes here in San Ramon, but the topic that they talked about was the declining state of youth mental health and some of their observations as sports trainers and teachers. And they also talked about the upcoming senior tech days that they do in conjunction or in support of the senior center. They have teens that'll go over and help the seniors with their technology, not just phones, computers, how to log into a Zoom meeting, et cetera. And by the way, there's discussion to maybe change the name of the room over there at the senior center from the computer room to the tech center or the tech room to acknowledge kind of the evolving capability and skills that are used in that room. And that's it.
Okay, Marisol, the sequel.
No, I just wanted to add that I was joined Sridhar, Councilmember Burrows, at the event for the Discovery Counseling Center, and it was really, if you haven't gone, definitely go. It's there was not only was it a fundraiser, great fundraiser, but it was an opportunity to really immerse yourself in the culture of our city, and there was a lot of dance and food, and that incredible food. And so if you haven't gone, be on the lookout for the next event, and please go. That was it. Thank you so much.
And I would just, without having to go through everything you just heard, that light parade was a big success. I think you're going to be doing this every year. There were no bad remarks on it. It's all good. And the music, Brad did a great job on that one too, and all of the staff. But I think it was, of all the things we were doing, that one may have been the best. And the ice rink ribbon cutting that you heard, that's another one of these annual things. The only thing missing this year was, last year we had a full moon. And if you can imagine what that was like, yeah, we'll work on it for next year. But yeah, it's a big one. And the tree lighting's coming, which is also a very big one. At not only here, but in the park, but at City Center. And it just doesn't seem to be official Christmas until they light up Mariah Carey and she sings the song. So something to look forward to. Not quite as much as you can all look forward to the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference next month, which would be held right here. And I just wanted to let you know, if you didn't get it last month, the big thing is the ugly sweater contest. So you don't dress up for this thing. It's an ugly sweater. And I will tell you, Renee Morgan from Danville takes this extremely seriously. I think she's won it every year that I can think of. So don't come in a tie. Yes, you'll be the only one. Okay, next to that carries. Is there any public comment on this?
Not that I've received.
Public comment on this is open. Seeing no one is closed. Next item.
Item 11, adjournment.
Okay, we're adjourned. We don't need a vote on